Right, good afternoon, everyone. I do apologise about the late start of the meeting, but can I welcome you all to this special meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee and express my appreciation for you turning out at relatively short notice for this. The meeting today is being live broadcast, so members are reminded to use the microphones when speaking. Please make sure the speaker is close in front of you and not obstructed by any papers or laptops. There is no fire alarm scheduled for this morning, so if the alarm goes off, we should leave by the normal exit and assemble at the front, and facilities are next door if required. Right, we've had apologies for absence from Councillor Broadbank, Councillor Hollier, who is substituted by Councillor Fisher, from Councillor Melly and from Dr. Green. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Right, public participation. We have received one public question or statement by the deadline on Wednesday. Miss Swinburne, if you'd like to join us at the table. You have 3 minutes to address the committee, and you may put one supplementary question without notice in response to the reply received. Okay, right, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The accounts before you will receive a disclaimed audit opinion from Mazars for the second year in a row. Mazars' audit completion report identifies continuing significant weaknesses in governance arrangements. It was not included in the original published agenda pack. Earlier this week, the auditor confirmed the report had been provided to the authority and understood to have been seen by the Chair and Vice. It was then sent to the committee and was added as a late item with a day's notice following a formal request raising statutory publication requirements. Members and the public have therefore had very limited time to consider it before this approval. A formal objection to the accounts, including governance transparency issues, has been accepted and remains unresolved. Against that background, you are being asked to approve an annual governance statement declaring that governance arrangements operated effectively during 24-25. In October, I raised specific concerns about the absence of contemporaneous delegated officer decision records, retrospective recording of spending decisions and unusable £500 expenditure data. Additionally, no contract register or grant register was available. At 31st March 2025, there was these clear evidence to control failures. The minutes record those concerns, and you agreed to delegate related amendments to be incorporated into the AGS. Despite multiple requests, no track changes version has been provided. The document before you today is not the document seen in October. The core assurance paragraphs remain unchanged. The action plan refers only broadly to improving transparency. It does not identify those year-end significant control failures or set out specific corrective measures. The committee is being asked to declare governance effective in a year which the auditor cannot express an opinion on the accounts. Significant governance weaknesses remain. Identified control deficiencies at year-end were not reflected in the AGS. Those positions are not consistent. Chair, if the auditor is unable to give assurance of the accounts, it is difficult to see how this committee can assert that governance operated effectively without explicitly acknowledging and addressing those failures in the action plan. Members do not have an option to disclaim. You should not be asked to sign that governance operated effectively when it evidently was not. You should not sign without a minuted disclaimer at least. Thank you, Chair.
So thank you. I'll ask the Director of Resources to repeat it. Sorry. Thank you, Ms Swinburne. I'll ask the Director to respond.
Thanks, Chair. There were a number of points in Ms Swinburne's statement, so I'll try and unpack those in a logical order for the committee and Ms Swinburne. So firstly, regarding the external audit position, it is correct that the accounts will receive a disclaimed audit opinion, and this arises from the auditor's inability to obtain sufficient evidence within the statutory deadlines due to resourcing pressures. It does not in itself represent the conclusion that there are issues with the accounts or that governance arrangements failed. The auditor's report also identifies a number of significant weaknesses, and these are openly acknowledged within the annual governance statement, particularly in its summary of significant weaknesses and progress in Appendix 3. Secondly, on timing of the audit completion report, the report was finalised after the agenda publication deadline following completion of the auditor's work in other areas of the group. Draft material had been shared with the Chair and Vice Chair of the committee prior, and once finalised was shared with the wider committee and was published at the earliest practical opportunity. While this has meant limited time for members and the public to review it, the timing reflects the completion of the auditor's work rather than any decision by the authority. Note also that the auditors will present their findings in detail at the next meeting of the committee. Thirdly, on the accepted objection to the accounts, as noted in October, the acceptance of an objection by the external auditor is a procedural step required under legislation. It means the objection will be considered. It does not mean that any finding has yet to be made or that objection has been upheld. This matter is separate from the disclaimed opinion and will be dealt with as part of the auditor's work before issuing their audit completion certificate, which is also pending some outstanding National Audit Office guidance around the whole of government accounts. Fourthly, I want to address the points related to transparency and specific control matters. The points raised mirror those in a similar statement from Ms Swinburne presented in October, covering delegated officer decision records, retrospective spending decisions, the fact that £500 payment data was not presented in machine-readable format, and the absence of a grant register or contract register. A response was given, then noting firstly that decisions in 2024-2025 were typically not delegated by the authority to officers, and evidence was provided to the requester of a number of specific decisions being made at full authority level in response to their accounts inspection requests. The annual governance statement also recognises the need to strengthen transparency further. It includes actions relating to improving the accessibility and formatting of published data into machine-readable form and commits to centralising key data sets to meet transparency requirements. An audit was also commissioned as part of the action plan to cover overall transparency requirements, including publication of grant awards and procurement contracts. This is complete and has provided the authority with reasonable assurance around relevant arrangements. Further amendments have been made to the AGS. Highlight these issues are agreed at the October meeting and summarised in the following papers. The papers include a clear explanation of what has changed since October in the summary appendix rather than providing additional track changes versions. Fifth, I'd like to respond on the point that the committee is being asked to declare governance arrangements operated effectively. The annual governance statement does not make that claim. In section 6, it provides a balanced and candid summary assessment of the authority's first full year of operation. It makes clear that the authority remains at early stage of maturity, identifying weaknesses in areas such as financial reporting, information governance, risk management, and audit readiness. These are all clearly set out in detail at Appendix 3, along with progress against actions to address them. The AGS is not a pass-fail judgment. It is a self-assessment that reflects both strengths and weaknesses and sets out the improvement plan for the year ahead. Finally, it has been indicated that approving the AGS is inconsistent with the audit disclaimer. The two processes serve different purposes. A disclaimer reflects the authority's ability to obtain evidence in time. The AGS is the authority's own assessment of governance using a national SIPFA SOLIS framework. It's entirely consistent to approve an AGS that acknowledges weaknesses and sets out actions, even where a disclaimer has been issued. In summary, the issues raised are recognised, considered and directly reflected within the annual governance statement. The AGS does not assert that everything worked perfectly. It provides a transparent and proportionate account of a foundational year, sets out the weaknesses identified and commits to the actions needed to strengthen the governance moving forward. Chair, that concludes my response.
Ms Swinburne, if you have a supplementary question.
Thank you, Chair. I guess of all the things, just as an aside on this in terms of governance, for me to have to present my remarks two or 3 days before and for an extended essay to be read back to me without having the chance to read it first, I think is somewhat unfair, but I'll proceed. I can't go into detail in all of those things, but there was £54 million spent last year with virtually no decision record at all. The Constitution was almost the same last year as it is this year, but so the delegated powers were all there, except there was no way you could find any delegated decisions. Members, as you know, cannot sign off money, they can't sign off SLAs, they can't sign off contracts. Yeah, I could find nothing. I think but I respect what the Section 73 is saying, but I request that you actually be quite clear about what that AGS is for and what it isn't. I know I'm 1 out of 1 million here, but it's not up to standard. And to £54 million without almost any delegated decisions being recorded. Nobody else made those decisions. It was the officers, they had to. Thank you, Chair. There's no question, it was a statement.
Thank you for your further comments. Right. Before I move on, obviously members have heard the director's response in the original questions. Are there any member questions that they want to ask on that statement? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Well, if we can sort of cut to the chase with all of this, Ms Swinburne said that we didn't have the option of approving with a disclaimer. Would somebody like to elaborate on that? Because I, for one, would certainly like to give a disclaimer in the form of abstaining from voting. Now, whether that's an option for the rest of the committee, I don't know. Just like some guidance on that, please. And just one other thing, while I've got the floor, I do find it a bit disconcerting that we've been asked to vote on this. And where's the external auditors? I know you said they're coming at the next meeting to discuss things in detail, but that's not good enough.
Director, yeah.
Let me pick up the question on the disclaimer. It goes back to my response to Ms Swinburne's statement, in that the annual governance statement is not a pass-fail judgment. What it's meant to do is present warts and all the position of the authority with respect to governance, its points of development, and you as a committee are very not being asked to give assurance to the outside world that everything operates effectively in the authority. I think in the context of your own personal position on this, it falls within the normal voting arrangements for the committee. So should you choose not to vote, it would fall under those voting arrangements.
Right. Are there any other questions? No. Councillor Fisher.
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to do it, but under the section on financial management, the comment is made about the lack of capacity in the financial team, and which contribute to the poor quality of financial accounts. Has that capacity issue been dealt with, so we won't be dealing with the same statement in the 25-26 accounts?
Okay, Councillor Fisher, I think that's really for when we actually get to the statement, rather than on what the director said in response to Ms Swinburne. Yeah, okay. If there are no other questions on the director's response and to the public statement, no. Okay, thank you. Let us then move on to item 4. The final approval of the statement of accounts and annual government statement. And if I could ask the director to introduce that report.
Thank you, Chair. And Chair and members, before I introduce the statement of accounts and the AGS, I want to begin by offering my sincere apologies for the inconvenience caused by the need to hold a special meeting at such short notice. And I appreciate your availability for the meeting. Following that, I'll take members through the key points of the financial statements and the annual governance statement. Firstly, in terms of background and process, the members will recall that the committee reviewed the draft statement of accounts and draft annual governance statement on 14th of October 2025. At that meeting, members noted the drafts and discussed a series of amendments to strengthen clarity, transparency, and the presentation of governance activity in the AGS. Those amendments have now been incorporated into the final document. In terms of the financial statements, the financial outturn, reserves position, and group results remain unchanged from the version reviewed in October. The changes made since then relate solely to disclosure, presentation, and technical corrections, which I'll summarise in a moment. The final documents need to be approved today to allow the external auditor to issue their final disclaimed audit opinion before the statutory backstop deadline of 28th of February. In terms of amendments to the statement of accounts, the amendments incorporated in the financial accounts are listed at Appendix 1 and are all disclosure based. The key changes include the capital financing requirement note 15, which corrects a casting error in the capital financing requirement note, and reclassifies a land adjustment from sources of finance to capital investment. The pension disclosures at note 29, the pensions note has been updated to improve compliance with the SIPFA code. The asset ceiling adjustment has been removed from the movement in scheme liabilities and is now presented correctly as a separate restriction on the surplus asset. Other changes reflect minor adjustments and corrections, and none of these adjustments affect the bottom line, the reserves position, or the overall financial standing presented in October. In terms of a general financial position overview, which is presented in the report, which has not changed since October, the statement of accounts covers the first full year of the combined authority, including the transfer of police and fire functions from May 2024. Key points include, at the end of the year, usable reserves of £49.9 million, cash and cash equivalents of £60.9 million, a group pension liability of £1.58 billion, driven primarily by the Chief Constable's pension scheme. There's a negative net reserves position reflecting the unfunded pension liabilities noted previously, which are consolidated at a group level. Moving on to the annual governance statement, this is the third time the AGS has been presented to members. The version before the committee today includes all updates following the October meeting, as summarised in Appendix 2, which has been shared with the Chair and Vice Chair shared with the Chair and Vice Chair in accordance with the delegation agreed at the October meeting. Key updates include points on transparency and open data, which expand narrative on reformatting, centralising and improving transparency data sets, and a new reference to internal audit activity supporting transparency improvements in general. Internal audit findings have been updated on fire and rescue internal audit commentary, clarifying areas of positive assurance and areas requiring follow-up. New narrative on policing internal audit findings has also been added. There's been some governance clarifications also added, with additional text explaining the Chief Constable's independent corporation sole status from the authority and updated descriptions of assurance arrangements across policing and fire. All updates have been reviewed with the Chair and Vice Chair under the delegated process agreed in October. One point of note is that since a final consistency review has identified some presentational errors in the statements that are presented at the committee today, these are in the cash flow statement. The drafts presented show an unexpected £16 million increase in the movement in creditors compared to the publication drafts. This has been traced to a formula error in the consolidation, and it's proposed that this error is reversed. There is no impact on reserves or financial position. Similarly, on capital commitments, the table shows nil, where previously had a total balance of £6,409,000. Also, as a result of a formula error, it is proposed that this error is reversed. There is no impact on reserves or the supporting narrative to that note. In terms of the pension asset ceiling calculation, some amendments to that calculation were noted previously in my report. However, this incorrectly disclosed as part of the asset ceiling adjustment relating to policing and fire within movement in scheme liabilities rather than a restriction in the surplus asset. This is a technical disclosure that can be adjusted for in next year's statements, and it is proposed that this is not changed. The above three final adjustments will lead to change to recommendations presented in the report, and I'll hand over to the monitoring officer to take us through the recommendations and changes.
Thank you, Mike. The proposed recommendation changes to recommendation 1, which currently reads: approve the financial statement of accounts for 2024 to 2025. It's proposed that additional wording is included to read: subject to adjustments to the cash flow statement and to reinstatement of capital commitments disclosures The rest of the recommendations are as set out in the agenda pack.
Okay, are there any questions, first of all, before we get to debate? Obviously, it's very unsatisfactory that we have further amendments at this late stage. And I hope we will learn lessons from this so that we do not have this occurring again next year.
Question.
Yes, please.
Again, the auditor's report makes comment on the poor quality of financial statements, attributes this down to a lack of capacity. Has that been dealt with so we won't be dealing with this situation in 2025, 2026?
Yes, so these financial statements cover the entire authority, and the lack of capacity was largely in relation to the general budget aspect of the house, or the new combined authority.
Right.
So initially there was a benefit on combination because we got access to expertise that already existed within the other areas, and that's partly covered that. But at the time, in the year in question, the maximum size of our finance team internally was myself and the head of finance, and included 2 posts that were provided to us through an SLA with North Yorkshire. Through this year, we've moved through a process of, firstly, we secured some additional interim resource, which is in place at the moment at an assistant director level, to help us with developing the systems and processes. We brought in an interim head of finance also to help us through the budget process, which has happened. And we're currently in the middle of a substantive recruitment process for both of those roles permanently. We've also recruited 2 additional accountants into the authority, and are in a substantive recruitment process for 2 business partners as well. So we'll be at a team size of about 8 or 9 compared to 3 previously. So we've invested quite heavily in that, and that's been approved just this morning through our budget setting process.
Thank you, because clearly this is not just about finding the problems, it's about making sure that they are sorted out and the situation doesn't occur again. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Sorry, are there any other questions? If not, then we can proceed to debate and to reach a decision on this item. I'm happy to move the amended recommendations that were outlined by the monitoring officer. Councillor Lunn has seconded. Okay. Can I see all those in favour of the amended recommendations? Please show. Okay. Thank you. Are there any against? Are there any abstentions? Thank you. Yes. Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Clearly, there are, as has been identified, some significant weaknesses that are mentioned in the report that we are going to be discussing at the next meeting. I have spoken to the director and have asked specifically that the current situation in terms of those 4 weaknesses is covered in the director's covering report to our next meeting. Okay.
When you talk of the next meeting, as I've said before, can we have it in a proper room rather than this broom cupboard again? I appreciate this was a one-off meeting, but if it's a scheduled meeting, at least for the decency of North Yorkshire members, it's not held in this room again.
Okay. I know Will has been working on that. Do you want to say anything?
Well, certainly for the next meeting, we are in the Hudson room, and would like to proceed on that basis going forward, if at all possible.
Right. The date of the next meeting is Wednesday, the 15th of April, here at West Offices in the Hudson room. So can I thank you all for your attendance and very much express my appreciation for you making the effort to ensure that we were quorate today and could sign off the various documents that we're required to. Thank you very much.